Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us on our session for providing an insight into cloud licensing. Now, when we talk about cloud licensing, essentially what it means is that what are the nuances involved when you're going on to Microsoft Cloud? Okay, here when we talk about cloud licensing, we're going to be concentrating exclusively on Microsoft Cloud. So, what are our talking points today? So, we'll talk about what Microsoft Cloud is, benefits under the different agreements that you can buy. And as part of those agreements, what you have in terms of software assurance, license mobility, and we'll touch base very lightly on the different types of cloud services that Microsoft offers. Now, most of you may or may not be may be on some kind of cloud service that's available from Microsoft, from AWS, from Google. That's fine. But there are certain nuances there, especially if you're on with Microsoft. There are certain features available to you with the licensing that Microsoft provides that actually can help you in terms of cost benefits. So let's talk about cloud licensing. So basically, when we talk about cloud licensing from Microsoft's point of view, we're talking about licensing the existing services that you have, okay, or we go with new services, and how best you can put those on the cloud for ensuring that we maximize what we have and we ensure that we don't overspend or underutilize. Now, some of the key points of cloud licensing, as you see here, we're talking about things. So as you know, it's a subscription-based model. So when we're talking about services like Microsoft 365, those are your subscription-based models. So you buy as and how you need. Your cloud-based infrastructure is basically your Azure services in the background, okay, where we have your infra and platform services. Because these are cloud-based services, they don't rely on underlying existing equipment for you to have. So the biggest advantage that we have is flexibility when it comes to scaling up. You can scale up, you can scale down, depending on how you want to increase or decrease your utilization. You're always going to be on the latest versions of your softwares on cloud because that's the whole concept of being on cloud, that you're constantly on the latest versions. Part of the infrastructures and productivity solutions that Microsoft offers allows people to collaborate and work remotely. And believe me, we saw that during the pandemic, right? Even today, also there are many situations where people still have to work remotely, and that is definitely and that definitely comes into play here. Cost effectiveness, yes, for the simple reason is that you know exactly what you're paying for, you know how much you're paying for, you know for how long you're going to be paying for. But most importantly, the part that really comes into play for you is your compliance and security, because the whole solution has been designed to ensure that you only pay for what you use, so you know what you have. But at the same time, because these solutions are catered to be as secure as possible for even Department of Defense level security, so you can be rest assured that attempts for people to hack in, for people to try and steal data, they're virtually non-existent in this situation. So let's go to our key benefits of cloud licensing. Okay. Now here our first and obvious benefit is cost savings. What do we talk about cost savings here? Cloud as a service is only OpEx. That means you're only paying for what you use. You don't need to set up the infrastructure to start utilizing services, which means you're not paying for data centers, you're not paying for servers, you're not paying for storage, you're not paying for backup appliances, you're not paying for all the other ancillary equipments that come with it, like in terms of cooling, in terms of real estate, in terms of your power consumption and things like that. The only cost that you're incurring out here, because this is obviously on the internet, is internet bandwidth. Scalability and flexibility, as I mentioned earlier, we are talking about a situation where you pay only exactly for what you use. In the case of platform and infra services, you know how much your software utilizes in terms of resources, and you can go ahead and book that kind of that those resources only. You know exactly what you're going to be paying upfront because all these are prepaid services. Okay. And these can be bought either monthly or annually as how you need to. The rest of it, what I will talk through. So when we talk about accessibility, we are talking about the ability to utilize these services from anywhere and from any device. It also provides you with easier management because everything is available through a single management pane. So if you're looking at Azure, everything's available on a single control panel. If you're looking at Microsoft 365 services, everything's available from a single control panel. Deployments become easier. Update management becomes easier because again, depending on what you have, the service provider actually takes care of that for you. You don't have to worry about all that. Deploy your security is also a key feature that is taken care of because again, like I said, these are department Department of Defense level security services. Okay, but just the fact that they're cloud services does not mean that these cannot be integrated. There are a lot of these services that are available from Microsoft Cloud that can be actually integrated with third-party solutions. In fact, if you look at the authentication mechanism, that's your Azure Active Directory services, it can be utilized to authenticate your users to non-Microsoft services as well. And of course, the fact that because we are not maintaining maintenance and support of this is taken care of by the service provider. So that's one big heading out from your IT team, and they can concentrate exclusively on ensuring that the services that they're offering for the end users is running as smooth as possible. Now, cloud as a service can be purchased uh, can be purchased in many ways. You can do a pay as you go, but for enterprises, typically what we look at is what is called as a cloud CSP agreement, a cloud solution provider agreement. Now, CSP, now very quickly I'll touch base on is basically been designed by Microsoft, where partners like us can club not only the licenses that you're buying, Microsoft Cloud services that you're buying, but as well as partner services and additional features that individual partners would offer. Okay. The advantage out here for CSP is that there is no entry barrier. Okay, and we'll touch base on that when we talk about enterprise agreements. So there is no limit to the to the minimum number of users required. You can go ahead and start at any base that you want. You can grow, you can reduce. Okay, and because of which you have, as I explained, partners can offer value-added services. We can offer scalability and agility for the simple reason is that you can increase or decrease your consumption on a month-to-month basis, and you pay exactly for what you use. Now, the other side of it, we have something called as enterprise agreements. Now, for those of you who are new to this, enterprise agreements have been around for quite some time now. They've been around for more than 20 years. We used to offer them to customers initially who were more than 250 seats strong. But now Microsoft has actually designed enterprise agreements for large organizations who have over 1,000 users. And for them who consume uh, Microsoft services in a large possible way, so like your Tatas of the world, your Infosys of the world, Wipros and all, who consume Microsoft Cloud services in the over thousands and thousands of employees. For them, an enterprise agreement definitely makes sense. Okay, here but more than just more than just cost savings, we have definitely have additional features available like dedicated support. Yes, there is a little bit there's scalability options available. I mean, you can scale up as much as you want, but more importantly, Microsoft actually connects with you one to one when you're an enterprise when you sign up an enterprise agreement, and there are better they actually offer different, you have different account managers, you have technical account managers and all. Now, for those of you who had attended our webinar last month when we talked about on-prem licensing, we also talked about a certain feature of on-prem licensing called as software assurance. Now, software assurance comes with certain benefits, especially for cloud. Okay, these have been tweaked in the last few years by Microsoft to allow you to utilize those software services that you bought internally, especially regarding Microsoft Windows Server and SQL Server. Okay, so the primary focus of software assurance is here we are talking about relates to the features like your extended security updates. Now, what does that mean? Say, for example, you are using an application that uses an older version of Windows Server SQL Server. If you have bought that software with software assurance and you're continuing to pay the software assurance from it, what you can do is you can actually move those existing legacy versions to cloud, and Microsoft will actually support you. And the reason why I'm saying Microsoft will support you is because if those softwares are currently deployed in-house, okay, if you've currently deployed Windows Server 2012 in-house, you've deployed SQL Server 2012 in-house, Microsoft will no longer send you any updates, no security patches, nothing. But we move those into cloud with an active software assurance, you get something what is called as extended security updates, right? You also get something called as hybrid benefits. Now, what are hybrid benefits? Say, for example, just now you bought Windows Server with the current version is 2022, and you bought it with an active software assurance. So you buy the standard edition of that. Now, with standard edition and with software assurance, you have the ability to use that license either in-house or you can use that license in cloud. Now, how does this help us? Say, for example, I've got an application that I'm going to deploy, but for some reason, that application that the application deployment has not been completed. So testing and all is going on, but my purchases have been made. So if I buy with active software assurance, what happens is that when I want to move these to cloud, okay, when I want to move my instances to cloud, if I have active software assurance, what happens is that when I go to infra as a service in cloud, I do not have to buy the corresponding OS licenses in there. I can actually utilize my existing OS licenses that I have on-prem and move those to cloud. The other thing what I can also do when I'm using when I've got software assurance out here is that if I'm using an older version of Windows Server, like for example 2016 or 2019, I can upgrade that to the current version because software assurance, one of the benefits that you get is that you're already prepaying for the next version of the product that you're using software assurance with. Okay, you can also set up your dev test environments. These dev test environments actually are very beneficial. If you look for most of the developers today, if you look at it, all of them like to do their dev test running inside Azure. So you can deploy these services at a much lower cost out there as part of your training, and you can also get your training and support as part of those services. Now, one of the features I talked about on software assurance is license mobility. Now, when we talk about license mobility, I'm also the reason I've clubbed it up with a feature of cloud services is what we call as reserved instances. Now, reserved instances is a facility that is offered by your cloud service provider. Okay, AWS, GCP, as well as Azure, they offer reserved instances, and the ability is that we reserve reserve infra services beforehand. Now, this in combination with your license mobility, okay, that means you've already paid for the software beforehand, okay, you're using that on cloud, and you go ahead and you reserve your instances of compute memory storage in cloud beforehand. The combination of license mobility and reserved instances allows for massive savings rather than if you start up any instance in pay-as-you-go model. Okay, those savings when you start adding it up month on month, month on month, month on month, when you start seeing that you've already got these services, why not utilize them in cloud? And the biggest saving here that it avoids is double licensing. Why do we say double licensing? So if you bought Windows Server in-house without software assurance, you're stuck with that. That can only stay in-house. Okay, software assurance, when you buy it when you make your license purchases. You can't buy those. You can buy software assurance separately after you bought your license. They have to be made with your license purchases. So you're on making use of your existing licenses in cloud. So if you're decommissioning servers in-house, you want to transition those licenses, you have software assurance, move those to cloud. You're also, and that gives you an optimal resource utilization, because then you're not stuck with licenses that you're not using, right? Microsoft's not going to take back your existing licenses. And reserved instances in combination with that allows organizations for significant discounts. Now, when you're significant discounts, we are talking about in the 60% plus range. That and license mobility as a combination. 60 to 70% is what we have seen in cases where you go with mobility and reserved instances. And this also gives you predictability on cost. You know that, okay, I've already paid for this. Now, what is that extra top up that I'm paying? That itself will give you an idea of what my OPEX expenses in the next coming months. In fact, for budget planning, when you're actually trying to utilize existing resources, this whole concept of reserved instances and license mobility makes a lot of sense. So coming to our different cloud services that are offered by Microsoft, we have three, they're clubbed up under three major headings. One is infrastructure as a service. Now, infrastructure as a service here, as we've been talking about, is basically cloud compute services where Microsoft provides a platform where you can create virtual machines and you can host certain your applications. Okay, inside those virtual machines, you have to manage those applications yourself. Okay, you have to manage the data that's there in there. Okay, you have to manage the connectivity as well. Now, the best part here is that you have virtual machines of different sizes, so you know exactly what you're paying upfront for. You have these different additional services, so you have things like load balancers. Okay, you have different storage services, and you have different integration facilities available to other non-Microsoft third-party service providers. Because this is infrastructure as a service, so the biggest change as compared to setting up of your infrastructure in your local data center is that you're doing away with the capex. That means you're doing away with setting up of your infrastructure, if your servers, your storage, your networking, your cooling, your power backups, all those additional features that you require for setting up an in-house data center. All that is being handled by the service provider. Now, if we go one step further, we have something what is called as platform as a service. So on platform as a service, what happens is that the service provider provides you with not only an environment where where they manage the operating system, but they also provide you with the application in this case. So if you're going to develop something fresh in terms of an application, actually consider using platform as a service rather than infrastructure as a service, because there's still more savings here to be had as compared to using infra. Now, infra is good when we are doing things like lift and shift. Platform is good when we are building something from scratch. Any new application that you're building from scratch works better, and in fact works more effective when you're deploying it in platform as a service. So what happens in this case? You get the infra layer, you get the OS layer, and you get the application layer. Everything above the application layer is what you have to manage. Application layer and below is what the service provider manages. Okay, so that's even less of even less of the actual infra that you as an end customer have to take care of. And finally, the last part we have is your software as a service. So this is actually where Microsoft productivity services are come under. Okay, anybody providing you with a complete um, on-prem solution where you just have to provision it by setting up username and password and putting a certain amount of customization. So software as a service. So in Microsoft's case, we are talking about your Microsoft 365 services where you're getting Windows as a subscription, Exchange Online, Skype for Business Online. You get Microsoft Teams, you get SharePoint services, OneDrive for businesses. All this gets classified as software as a service. Okay. So from a Microsoft point of view, what do they provide under the SaaS model? You have your operating system licenses, which can be bought for end clients, which can be bought as a subscription model. So which means no more paper licenses. You have your Office 365 services, which have a combination of mailboxes, storage, personal as well as organization level storage. You have your enterprise level uh, collaboration and communication services like Microsoft Teams. What we're using just now is exactly from Office 365 services. Then you have your security and endpoint management, which comes under the EMS flag out here. All of this actually, Windows 11, Office 365, and EMS is all part of your Microsoft 365, which can actually, these three can be bought separately or it can be bought collectively as part of Microsoft 365. And what Microsoft also offers is Dynamics CRM as a service. So if you know, even today, SAP also offers you SAP Online as a service. So you don't actually have to deploy the SAP service in cloud, in on-prem, on virtual machines and all. You can actually go ahead and utilize CRM services straight up as a service, as a SaaS-based offering. So just a little side-by-side comparison. Now, when we remember, we spoke about platform and software as a service. Now, when we talk about on-prem, what you deploy on-prem, you have to manage completely. Now look at these blocks which are marked in brown. This is the part where the service provider manages. So when you talk about infra as a service, you see that everything at the up to the virtualization layer. So virtualization, server, storage, networking, all this is managed by a service provider. When we go to platform as a service, service provider goes ahead and manages even your operating system, your application, and application runtimes. Okay, all you have to do in platform is manage your actual application itself, the code, application code, and the data for that. But when you talk about software as a service, everything is managed by the service provider. All you need to do is to provision it, is put up your username and password, and that's it. Okay, you get your customization options available for that everybody can do, right? And that's it. Everything else in software as a service is completely managed by the service provider. So this brings us to the end of the second section. Yes, thank you everybody, and this has been a great session. Thank you for your participation.